Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. I often think about this, but this router sits for a long time without anything happening. And over time, the oil can dry out. So every time I use it, I just give it a drop of oil. Now, I'm going to route the end of this and then route the front. But to make the end routing work better, I want to have just this board routed, and I don't want to go along this back edge. And I found that if I put another board here to act as a stopper, then the router can just go past it a little bit and go into this waste board, and I don't have to worry about it coming out here and damaging this surface, which I don't want routed. I just want to have the front edge and the ends. That way it has a good chance to track along and I don't end up with a skip over onto the back of it. I can do the other end the same way. I just have to loosen the clamps. And slide this board down until it's even. And then tighten the clamp back up. Now, one thing I do have to do is move this clamp, because I don't want to have that getting in the way of the router moving through. And I don't take the whole cut all at once. I back off a little bit. And I might be able to hold it with one clamp, but 2 clamps work better. Keeps it from moving around on me. Make sure I got all my hard steel parts, clamps and things away. Now I have a nice edge on my shelf. Measure twice, cut once. I want to have this up towards the top of this board. There. Now the cool thing I like about Klein jigs is it lets me do things that you wouldn't normally do. I have 2 knee braces. I can run screws down through there, and that'll anchor these right to that shelf. Now you see I've got this board anchored to that shelf in 4 places. Then I have these 2 anchored into the ends on the back side, and then I anchor from the back side of this board into the knee braces. So all the weight is going to be held onto the wall by putting screws to the back side, in this case the front side of this board. So the whole shelf is actually going to rest on top of this board, be held in place by those 4 screws so that it can't lever off, and it's going to be resting on these knee braces. And when I do the assembly, I'm going to glue everything together so the screws will hold it in place while the glue dries. Once the glue dries, it's not going to move ever again. And when I put the shelf on the wall, all the holes I put in with the Klein jig are going to be covered up. You won't be able to see them. Well, so much for that idea. But I have more sandpaper. Okay, to center this up, I just measured to the center of this, put a mark in the center there, then I put a mark in the center of this board. And I just have to line the two up, mark to mark. Now I like to use clamps before I do anything, because clamps are one of those things that you can change your mind on really easy. Okay, both things are flush. Board's flush on both ends. Still lined up with a mark. Means the board is centered. I use some of these 1-inch Kreg screws. The reason I use the 1-inch is this is 3/4 inch boards. The 3/4 inch boards, if I used a longer screw, the screw would. If I used a longer screw, the screw would stick out. But this 3/4 inch screw won't stick out the face of the other board. And the reason I use this long driver is so I can use a power driver. I could drive them by hand, but power driver works so much easier. And I really only need to put 2 in. Not real tight. One on each end. I can take the clamps off, get them out of my way. These are just Harbor Freight cheapy clamps, but you can see I don't need a whole lot of pressure to hold this together. All I'm doing is just keeping it on the bench and keeping the pieces aligned so that I can put them together. Now I take this board and I put it down here. Now I can clamp it this way and probably have it lay pretty good. But what I'm really looking for is to have it up tight against this center board. That's where this long clamp comes in handy. And once again, it's a Harbor Freight rather inexpensive clamp. And I can get these long ones for about the same price that I'd pay for one half this size in a name brand. Up this clamp down to make sure I got everything tight at the bottom. All good. Put a screw in there. Press that down snug. Now I have a nice shelf. I'll take the screws out, put some glue on the joints, drive the rest of the screws in, make sure this is all squared up, and I'm done. For a long time I thought Kreg jigs were a gimmick. You know, they weren't a good tool. They were a gimmick. And then I was at a estate sale and a Kreg jig was sitting on the bench and they wanted $1 for it. Now, $1, I'm always willing to pop for $1. $1's not worth as much as it used to be. I used to get 20 candy bars for $1. Now I don't get one. So this costs about the same thing as a candy bar. And it's much better for me. But anyways, I brought this home. Now it didn't have a drill bit. Okay, drill bit costs money, but I thought, okay, I can probably make a drill bit. It's just a 3/8 step drill. Then I happened to be at the Menards store and they had the proper step drill. Now I had to go back home and check to make sure that this jig was the right thing that I wanted. But after I did some research, I went back to Menards and bought the drill bit. Nice little step drill with a collar. That sets the depth so that the drill bit doesn't go through the bottom of the board. It stops short of drilling through the bottom. Once I had the jig and the drill, it was a while before I needed it. One day my wife said she wanted a table for her dressing room. And we looked online to see if we could find one, and she said, actually I want to have one just like the one that's in the bedroom. I said, I can make that. So I went and bought the wood, and using the Kreg jig, knocked one out in a heck of a hurry. I'll put a link up here. Almost everything on this shelf that's these, this, that, and those were all put up with the Kreg jig. They work really nice and the screws out of the way and doesn't cause any problems, so I kind of got used to the idea. Now I'm building a shelf and I wanted to have the screws hidden. So another use for the Kreg jig. How it works, but I'm convinced that glue is the best method to put anything together. Don't need a whole lot, just enough to fill the joint. Now when I assemble this, I don't put everything all up tight. I just put the screw in and get it started. That way everything has the opportunity to float a little bit. I know that this one goes on this side because the screw hole is on the inside there. I put a little glue on this, along the center of that. Slide it down into position. Insert the screw. Same thing over here. There. Now wipe off the squeeze out. This shelf's going to get painted white, but still, I want to have it look good. Now I can put the rest of the screws in. Oh, I'm going to tighten these up first. Shelf. Now since this is going to be for hanging the coats, there'll be 3 of these put on along the inside face. That way I'll be able to hang up 3 coats. It'll be plenty solid up against the wall, and I can drill a couple of holes here into the studs. Once I fasten this plate onto the wall studs, you can put an awful lot of weight on this shelf and not cause any problem. And of course, the coat hangers, you won't be able to pull those out. So that was the project for the shelf. I'll show you a picture of it when it's all done, but it won't be today.
This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union without the express written permission of the parents or legal guardians of the underage person.
Just drop it out
Such
in the
written
comments.
permission
You
must
know,
be
I read
on
'em
file at the local government
for
entity
watching.
in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.